Good afternoon, and we are continuing with our special elections broadcast from right here at the Elections Operations Center. And it's the final day of the elections as we're expecting the final results to be announced at 6 p.m. My name is Mahlase, and now we're going to be focusing on what's been happening in KwaZulu-Natal. A seismic shift, I think we can call it, especially because for the very first time in democratic South Africa, the ANC has lost the eThekwini metro. This is quite massive because in 2016 they had managed to hold on to it. eThekwini is a special place for the ANC because it is their biggest region in terms of party support. But it looks like with many other metros in the country, except of course for Mangaung, they have again lost this one. The big player in KwaZulu-Natal is the Inkatha Freedom Party that is growing by leaps and bounds from this election and have reason to celebrate. We have said that they are one of the big losers in this elections. Just to bring you in, when we look at the numbers from KwaZulu-Natal, you have basically the ANC provincially coming in at 45.59%, the DA at 21.59%, and the IFP, and I think I've just lost it, but I can actually bring in Mkhuleko Hlengwa coming in there to just give us how much you have done. Just give us that percentage. I just lost it in
7.19 in eThekwini, resulting in 16 seats. There are 2 wards that we have retained, of course, in Durban, and so we are quite happy at that growth. We are moving from 10 seats in eThekwini, and so we think that the work we had put in is paying off positively, because we had really as a party wanted to make sure that there's growth everywhere we were contesting, and so we are very happy that the growth in eThekwini coincides with the fact that now the ANC is below the 50% mark, and we're going to continue on that trajectory towards 2024.
That growth is in eThekwini, but it's also across the province. What is it about your campaign you think has won you these new voters, or is it return voters?
Well, we had a very focused campaign in the sense that we wanted to regain lost ground. We wanted to make sure that the municipalities we were governing, all of them came back, and we've successfully done that. And then we wanted to make sure that there's growth and tap into new spaces, and we've done that as well. I mean, the other shift, of course, which is quite massive in KwaZulu-Natal, is in Mahlatse, the Richards Bay area, because that is now going hung council. And we are quite comfortable with the fact that the district of King Cetshwayo, which includes Melmoth, Mthonjaneni, Eshowe, Inkatha, Mpangeni area, and Wambonambi, which is a very big district in KwaZulu-Natal, and also economically, of course, is of significance. We're certainly going to get that one back as well. You look at our growth in Umkhanyakude, very good. Zululand was a cooperation government before these elections and has now a clean sweep for the IFP, and so that is good. You look at uThukela is one district where we have done exceptionally well in, and we are also happy at the growth on the south coast. The Potchefstroom areas, Harding, Scottborough, Zintendo, Mzumbe. Mzumbe, you'll recall, was one of our challenging areas in that in 2011 we did not actually contest Mzumbe because we did not submit on time, and that's the reference case we gave to the IEC when they allowed the ANC to sneak back in the manner that they did for these elections. Mzumbe, for us, we're very happy. 6 wards flipped from the ANC, and also a growth in that regard. We are looking at those numbers very carefully, and we are eyeing the district because Umzwabantu is also a hung municipality, the Harding area. So all in all, a very good showing for the IFP. Maybe the last one I want to reflect on is Newcastle. Newcastle is also a hung municipality and is a significant economic hub and bracket in KwaZulu-Natal. And so the growth of the IFP is well beyond your rural areas. We're making inroads in your townships, in your towns and cities in the city, and that is quite good.
Let's go back to eThekwini. You are obviously a kingmaker because we are facing a hung municipality. Any conditions that you're putting forward to the ANC should they come knocking?
Well, we are putting together a negotiating team in the coming days. The results will be tabled before the National Council of the party on Saturday, and they will then give direction in terms of the terms of reference for the negotiations that we will be having. But of course, there are issues that we're not going to actually back down on. We are pushing back on the frontiers of corruption, and there must be consequence management, a massive cleanup. Etaweni is very corrupt, by the way. Absolutely corrupt. You've got reports that they're sitting on which are gathering dust because if you open them, you open a can of worms. But it's necessary. The Mahlase report is one such. And there's just a general total disregard for process in Ethekwini. So we're not going to work with anybody who's going to want to sit on those things. It's important that we clean up Ethekwini. Our manifesto was a 10-point plan. To get municipalities functionally effective towards service delivery and good governance, and so we're placing that firmly on the table. And there has to be an adherence to the rule of law in every material respect, and that's inclusive but not limited to the MFMA, the Structures and the Systems Act respectively, and National Treasury regulations amongst others. So we're looking at that. But most importantly is also an agenda towards now rebuilding these municipalities towards a sustainable economic trajectory so we can create jobs. Ethekwini is an economic hub. But the final point is, then we just need to do the basics. Durban is filthy. It is. And we need to clean it up. There's also a water challenge in Ethekwini, which is by design, because you've got the tenders for the water guns, and so they want to bring those and shutting down water. The corruption in the water sector in Ethekwini is one which also requires attention. So those are all issues that if we go into Ethekwini, there has to be agreement on those issues. We're not going to compromise on that, because the water crisis is counter economic development and just common Ubuntu and humanity.
We've seen you going into coalitions with the ANC in other parts of KwaZulu-Natal. What are the other parts of South Africa? What are the lessons learned in terms of how do we make sure that these coalition governments are not as messy as we have seen?
We need to change the narrative. These are necessary teething problems to a new phenomenon in South African politics. It was bound to happen because we are experimenting on a governance model which is new. And so we will be taking stock of the lessons. And the IFP is in a very strategic position in that we have worked with all these parties, the DA, the ANC, the EFF, and with Mr. Mashaba when he was in the DA. So we know what it is that they do and don't do. And we believe that we must therefore take a lead in the discussion. As part of the reflection. The important thing here is to have an honest conversation about the areas of agreement and the areas of disagreement. So you can then set out a very clear developmental agenda what you must do. Here's one example, because we've been benchmarking internationally. The CDU in Germany and the SPD have grand coalitions. And they work, but importantly, they are able to find each other on agreement and disagreement.
They're not about what we've seen in South Africa, where it's a conversation about I give you this MMC position and I give you that. There's actually a plan that is worked out to say, this municipality, this is what we are going to make sure we achieve.
Of course. They experienced in that. For us, it's going to be an evolution towards how that would happen, and that's why we are saying the next phase is to not put positions first, but an agenda for service delivery and improvement of the daily lived conditions of our people in the respective areas, and then parties deploying post that people who are fit for purpose for the agenda. Now that is the tough and difficult conversations that we need to have, and so it's not a conversation we can just have conveniently. No. And maybe that is where we need to now have legislative reforms which are going to guide the process towards the establishment of these municipalities moving forward when they are hung, because the 2-week timeline is a bit too stringent if you consider the varying issues that must be on the table. But we are a work in progress, and so it's absolutely necessary that this new democratic phenomenon which is now befallen us, we accommodate it in the legislative framework, and for political parties to begin reimagining themselves not as absolute winners but as being forced by the electorate to work together
and deliver.
And importantly deliver. So political maturity in that regard is very important.
All right, unfortunately, we've ran out of time. That was the IFP spokesperson, Mkhuleko Hlengwa, joining us here on Eyewitness News. Have to mention that they are one of the big winners in this election from, the parties, dominant parties, where we've seen the ANC and the DA decline nationally. They are the ones that are seeing growth, going into more councils, having more seats, and maybe a lesson that you can actually grow in your traditional stronghold and win back those that you have lost previously. So we are going to be continuing with our broadcast here as we count to 6 p.m. when the president is expected here at the Elections Operations Center.